What's going on, guys? Welcome on into a Cleveland Browns report. Matthew Peterson here, breaking down some roster moves during our live show, which airs every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, self-plug. But Chris Williams was added to the Browns practice squad, defensive tackle UDFA out of Wagner. He initially signed with the Colts back in 2020, appeared in 13 games for Indianapolis. He was on the Chiefs practice squad for much of this year, and now he's on the Browns practice squad, which initially, when I first saw this, it was like, oh no, who's hurt? Because anytime they add someone, it means someone is hurt at that position. So fingers crossed, no one is hurt at the defensive line position after losing Mo Hurst for the rest of the year. Siaka Ika played a good amount of snaps on Sunday. Didn't see anything too eye-popping out of him, but Chris Williams joining Tommy Togiai on the defensive line practice squad. So fingers crossed, this is just some practice squad signing that's going to go under the radar and we'll forget all about it in a couple weeks, and it's not about someone getting hurt, and the Browns need more help on the D-line. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show, though, we crossed 30,000 subscribers on Sunday. Not going to lie, it was a pretty wholesome moment for me. It's been incredible to see this channel grow, but we're not done growing. So help us continue to grow. And in return, I give shout-outs. So we're going to shout out a couple of our recent subscribers at the end of the show. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes. First story on the docket. Should the Browns extend Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah right now? I'm going to give it two Bernie heads. Do I want to see JOK extended from a personal level? Yeah, I love JOK as a player. I'd love to see him be a Cleveland Brown for a long time. Do I actually believe JOK is going to get extended today, tomorrow, the day after that? No. So that's why I'm kind of in the middle between what I would do versus what I think is going to happen. But JOK has one more year left on his rookie contract, 2024, but he's having a career year under Jim Schwartz. I mean, one more game, and he will have played the most amount of games in a single NFL season. He's got career highs in tackles for loss, sacks, interceptions for now. I think that Justin Fields' end of the first half pick might get taken away, but we'll count it. And then QB hits to go along with it. PFF also loves what we have seen out of number 6 this year. He is ranked 25th out of 80 qualifying linebackers. So we're talking about a top 25, top 30 type linebacker in our game at the moment. There's no doubt in my mind that JOK is on track for an extension. I don't think we're going to see it happen before week 1 of 2024. One, he's got one more year left on his rookie contract. 2, the Browns just extended Grant Delpit. 3, the Browns have one more year of JOK with a rookie contract. He's been great this year. There was some questions about his availability after the 2 first seasons of his NFL career. So I don't think Andrew Berry is going to be too big of a prisoner of the moment that goes, JOK is awesome this year, extend him. You can't extend every single guy that's got a really good season, right? That's why he's a GM and we're just fans and blog boys on the internet and whatnot. So I think Andrew Berry is going to be a little bit more patient with this one, and maybe JOK gets a Delpit type extension next year around this time. But like I said, he's on track for an extension. He's got career highs in all of these stats: 84 tackles this year, 18 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, one of which came on Sunday against Justin Fields, 5 QB hits, 1 forced fumble. I mean, you compare what JOK is doing this year compared to his first 2 seasons in the league. I mean, he's not playing any more snaps than he was last year. I thought it was a much higher snap percentage this year. Nope, 75%, just like 2022. But what's the difference? He's got more than double tackles for loss. He's got 3.5 sacks. He has really found a role in this Jim Schwartz defense. He finally, because he's a bit of a, lighter, quicker dude. He's not some big, stocky, off-ball linebacker. He doesn't have offensive linemen just shoving him around because he's got a good D-line in front of him. So I think JOK is definitely on track to get a contract extension. Now, when does that happen? Like I said, I don't think it's going to happen this season, maybe next season. What could that look like? Well, here are the top 10 highest paid linebackers. I don't think he's going to get top 10 money. Now, maybe if he really balls out to start next season, sort of like the way Grant Delpit did this year. But even Grant Delpit did not get top 10 safety money on average. So I don't think it's very likely that we're going to see JOK get, record-changing numbers at the inside linebacker position. Maybe he finds a 3-year, $25 million contract extension, $28 million contract extension, something in that neighborhood. But let me know, would you extend JOK? If you were in charge, would you just get it done right now thinking, hey, the guy's awesome, I've seen everything I need to see? Or would you be a little bit more patient going, there's one more year on his rookie deal, let's get a bigger body of work here before we jump the gun on a contract extension? Second segment now. Joe Flacco, was he almost poached? 4 Bernie heads on the keyword being almost, right? Evidently, there were attempts made to steal Joe from Cleveland, but it was never going to happen, so do not worry. Now, I'll expand on this story in just a moment, but our sponsor, Prize Picks, they've got an awesome deal/promo they are doing this holiday season. I'm really excited to share with you guys. Now, first, Prize Picks is a daily fantasy sports service where all you do is pick more or less on projected stats. And if you correctly predict 2 to 6 player stat projections, well, you can win up to 25 times your money. So take these Sunday slate of games here. I'm taking the more on Josh Allen and Gabriel Davis's yards, but they're also just a bit lower because they are goblin yards. Okay, so there's demons and goblins this holiday season. Goblins are lower, demons are higher. Demons, of course, harder to get, but a bigger payout. Goblins, easier to get, but of a lower payout. So I'm going to take the easy route, take the more on the Allen and Davis Goblin yardage total. I like the more on Raheem Mostert, 57.5 rushing yards straight up. And then the less on Tony Pollard's rushing yards, 53.5 against the Miami Dolphins run defense. Now, if you like my selections, feel free to ride with me over at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. That link is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Peter King recently wrote in an article that Joe Flacco's agent, Joe Linta, told me Sunday night he had 2 or 3 teams inquire about signing Flacco last Monday when the Browns put him on the practice squad for a day or two for roster management purposes. Joe didn't want to hear. This is what Joe Linta, the agent for Flacco, said. He absolutely wanted to stay in Cleveland. He loves the team. He really gets along well with the coach. So were there attempts to maybe have Joe Flacco poached? I suppose. But Joe Flacco was never going anywhere. This is not one of those moments where they almost got him. No, if a team really made an offer, the Browns would have just elevated him to the active roster, and it never was going to happen. So don't think that the Browns almost lost Joe Flacco. Now, which teams could this have been? Just spitballing here. The Jets, right? If this happened 2 weeks ago, the Jets were not quickly dead yet. I guess the Giants, maybe the Vikings. I mean, a couple of these teams without their starting quarterback that are in the hunt. I don't think the Bengals, the Ravens, or the Steelers would do it to just ruin the Browns. I mean, again, if you sign Joe Flacco, you got to pay Joe Flacco, and you got to open up a roster spot. So are they going to cut someone just to stick it to the Browns? I don't think so. So ultimately, Flacco is never going anywhere. Also, I don't think Flacco is dying to go anywhere when you look at it from a monetary standpoint. Like, Joe Flacco signed a pretty nice contract with the Browns with loads of incentives, right? It's worth up to over $4 million. Each win gets him $75,000. I know Joe Flacco's already a millionaire, but just think, Darnell Mooney dropping that Hail Mary. Yep, Joe Flacco, who's got multiple kids, tuition paid for in-state. Wild card win, by the way, $250,000. I mean, we're talking about out-of-state tuition now, private school. Divisional round win. Both his kids get to go to private school. $500,000, okay? AFC title. Now we're talking second home. Super Bowl, $2 million. Now they are naming dorms after him at Delaware. Ultimately, though, I keep saying this, and I'm not going to stop. I just a complete 180 for me on Joe Flacco. I used to be the guy that, got underneath Ravens fans' skin saying Joe Flacco's not elite. He's washed up. What he did in Denver and New York and whatnot showed that he was never that great of a quarterback, and I couldn't have been more wrong. I have loved what I've seen out of Joe Flacco on the field. He seems like an awesome dude. Everyone's rallying around him. It's truly an incredible story. Flacco fever's not going anywhere. I could not have been more wrong about a player before. I love what Joe Flacco has done for this team. Third segment now, Cleveland. They're going to win the AFC North. Just one Bernie head. I wish I could go all the way to 4 Bernie heads, but the moment I just give 4 Bernie heads to anything positive about the Browns, the moment I lose all credibility. But I'm not going to stop looking at the AFC playoff picture. I'm not going to stop doing work so I can look at the playoff machine because that's all I do right now. The Browns at 9-5 have a full lead in the wild card spot. They are 2 games back from the Baltimore Ravens. So let's talk about the AFC North race here. Look at the Browns and Ravens' remaining schedule. Cleveland goes to Houston, an 8-6 ball club this Sunday. The Ravens, Christmas night at San Francisco. Let's say the Browns win and the Ravens lose. All right, Cleveland now goes into the final 2 weeks, 1 game back. They can't afford to lose a game because if the Ravens win just 1 game, they get themselves to 12 wins. Going to have the tiebreaker over the Browns, I believe. If the Ravens win 2 games, it's done. So the Browns need to win out, and they need some help from Baltimore, who could lose potentially to the Dolphins after playing a tough game in San Francisco. The Browns could beat the Jets. So what if it did come down to that last game, though? Right? What if the Browns do go into the last week knowing if we win and Baltimore loses due to AFC North record and AFC conference record and all those tiebreakers, 12-5 goes to us, and all we got to do is take care of business in Cincinnati, but the Ravens got the shitty Steelers at home. If the Ravens drop their next 2 and the Browns win their next 2 and it comes down to week 18, it doesn't look great for Cleveland just on going to Cincinnati and winning versus Pittsburgh beating Baltimore, but then I'm reminded of Lamar against the Steelers all time. Maybe his toughest opponent. Like Lamar's great against the NFC because they don't see Lamar very often. However, the Steelers, the Browns, and the Bengals, they see Lamar quite often. And Lamar's numbers against the Pittsburgh Steelers speak for themselves. And then you also factor this in. The Steelers against the Ravens in Week 18. Where have we seen this before? Oh, I remember. In 2021, when the Ravens had an opportunity to potentially go to the playoffs. And what do? They choked it away. They needed some help from the outside, but they went into this game knowing we got to win and we have a chance. And the Steelers won, and the Steelers ended up getting the right to be the 7th seed to get spanked by the Kansas City Chiefs in Ben Roethlisberger's last playoff game. Now, it's not the first time we've seen the Ravens have an opportunity to a win and in and maybe a win and get some help in the final week of the season. Let's go back to the Week 17, 2017 game between Andy Dalton, who had nothing to play for with the Cincinnati Bengals, and a Joe Flacco-led Baltimore Ravens team that had everything to play for in the final week of the season. What happened? With under a minute to go, down by 4 points, you had Andy Dalton connect with Tyler Boyd for a 45-plus yard touchdown reception. It actually sent Buffalo to the playoffs. Remember, that's when the Bills sent all those wings over to Cincinnati for beating the Ravens and ending their playoff drought. So if there is a franchise to choke it away in the final week of the season, after playing a really good Niners team, the best team in the NFL, and a really good Dolphins team the 2 prior weeks, maybe losing those 2 games, it would be the Ravens. Now, before we get on to the rest of our show, I do want to ask this question, not about the AFC North, but how about the other side of the coin here? Who's going to win the NFC this year? Like, I think we spend so much time focusing on our conference, of course, but just for, I don't know, shits and giggles. Who do you think is going to win the NFC this year? I think it's the 49ers by a mile. I got the 49ers probably winning the Super Bowl at this point. But let me know who you think is going to win the NFC down below. Before we get on out of here, we had an incredible, remarkable, marvelous Week 15 watch party against the Chicago Bears. So it's time to give out some awards. The MVP is the Green family. Tim Green the first, Tim Green the second, Tim Green the third, Kelly Green, the entire Green family. You guys continue to show up and put up legendary numbers. We're talking about putting your team on your back in the fantasy football playoffs. That's the Green family right there. I cannot do what I do on Sundays without you guys. The All-Pro nod, it goes to Brad, number 1 Browns fan. Brad says he's the number 1 Browns fan, and he plays like it in the chat on Sundays. I mean, Brad does not come in here just to pick up a first down or two. Brad's out here like David Njoku on the final drive, not to go in for a field goal, but to set up another great score, all right? The Pro Bowl nod, I just want to give some love to a cool guy called Zone, and then the same goes for Ty Man the Buckeye, who gets the game ball. These guys in the chat making sure everyone's on time, making sure everyone's lined up, right? We have seen a lot of guys line up offsides offensively. If they had cool guy and Ty Man on their team, none of that would happen. There'd be no false starts. There'd be no silly penalties. Everyone would be prepared. Everyone would be locked in if they had cool guy and Ty Man on their squad. We are not able to be as successful as we are without those two. And then finally, the sleeper, Christopher Burr, who, Christopher Burr, everyone, has been hanging out in the grass, just minding his own business, moving his way up the depth chart. And when he finally got an opportunity with some meaningful snaps, gosh, he made the most of it. I mean, Christopher Burr is someone that everyone has to study the tape on because he is going to be a problem for future opponents in the coming weeks. Now, before we sign off and get on out of here, I did say at the start of the show, I want to highlight some recent subscribers. So Sam Pagan, Jarvis Lacey, John Wade, Brandon Evans, Evan Dietrichson, thank you guys, and thank you to everyone else who has recently subscribed or has been a longtime subscriber for helping us reach 30,000 subscribers. That's going to do it for us on this edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. If you have not subscribed, please go ahead and do so. We're going to keep you guys in the loop all season long with more Browns news and rumors updates.